I'm Allan Williams. I am the Energy Manager and Environmental Coordinator for Whistler Blackcomb. I'm in charge of the ski hill. So I'm not for the Whistler, the town. I'm for the actual ski hill. So Whistler Blackcomb is a publicly traded company. And I have a little bit of information about the company itself in case anyone is not aware. You might be surprised as to how big our operations are. So these are the stats that they put on our website for all the skiers. Everybody loves to see, but generally we have over 2 million visits per year. We have 1,000 year-round employees, and we have 4,000 employees in the wintertime. So we bring in a lot of volleys and seasonal people. We have 37 lifts, 17 restaurants, 7 staff housing complexes. Those are all like apartment buildings. They're basically dorms with no homework and a paycheck, which is terrifying. We have 37 retail and rental stores, offices, employee buildings, shops, so we have everything. We have an air-water snowmaking system, fan guns. We're dealing with huge motors on our lifts. We're dealing with compressors, so we have industrial applications, we have commercial. So we're kind of in everything at BC Hydro and Fortis because we have a very broad plant. We've been doing sustainability programs since the early 90s, and we've won about 30 awards to date for our programs. So we are a Power Smart leader as of last year, and we have been one of Canada's greenest companies for the past 5 years. Our Every Step Counts program is something we branded a couple of years ago. So we've been doing sustainability for quite a long time. We have branded our program so that everything sort of falls under that identity, and so all of this stuff ties into our Every Step Counts program. I'll do next. Currently, we have 3 buildings in the continuous optimization program. So the top one is our largest restaurant. It's 50,000 square feet. It's at the top of Whistler Mountain. That's the Roundhouse. We have the Rendezvous. It's in the investigation phase, and the Glacier Creek is coming on board this year. Go to the next one. So in the Roundhouse, we're in the coaching phase. We have saved almost 700,000 kilowatt hours there to date, and we're averaging about 420,500 kilowatts a year. So that's pretty significant. You can imagine with all of our operations, our hydro bill is pretty large. I can't say exactly how large because we're a public company, but it's really big. I think our CEO said that it is the second highest cost next to payroll outside of cost of revenue generated. So yeah, it's a really big thing. And so it's about $63,000 a year in savings at that one restaurant, and we are looking at the Rendezvous. We are about to put Glacier Creek in. The interesting thing is, once we did the Roundhouse, we put Energent in place at our other locations before being in the CEOP program, because we found so much value by going to the Roundhouse. We were like, holy cow, we found all these efficiencies. Even before optimizing, we put them onto the Energent system. And then we were able to be approved for CEOP, even though our buildings didn't meet the 50,000 square foot threshold, because we already had the EMIS in place. So that allowed us to do that and to be able to work with consultants like Ram, who's our CEOP guy from Prism. And so that was really helpful for us. One thing to note is we did have Pulse during the Olympics. So what happened was Pulse, when they were first starting out, they came to us, and what they did is they put for free all of their the systems in at all of the Olympic venues. For us, that was only snowmaking, and the Roundhouse, we had part of that. Now, snowmaking was not a good news energy story during the Olympics. We turned on everything as high as it could go, and we didn't shut it off. So we didn't use it. We didn't, we just weren't really ready to use it. So it was a good system, but we weren't really ready to use it. And at one point during the Olympics or the lead up, it was snowing 5 centimeters an hour, and we shut our snowmaking system off because our people couldn't get to anything, and they called and said, why is it off? So you can imagine how we were running that system for that year leading up. It was just sort of full on. If you go to the next one. So the thing about continuous optimization is it introduces you to the concept of monitoring, targeting, and reporting. I found this is a hard thing to bring to your senior leadership team, to say, okay, I want you to buy some meters, and I want to pay for some software, and I cannot give you a quantifiable return on investment for that. I can't tell. I know that everyone says it's 10 to 20%, but I can't. Like, I buy a boiler, I can tell you exactly how much I'm saving. The thing about CEOP is it brings you into that realm. It's a funded program. You have consultants, you have people to help you. You bring the EMIS in. Well, once we did that and we saw some of the results that we were seeing, of course what we did is we started looking at more of our systems and started bringing into snowmaking. So that was kind of when Energent came in. So we had some pulse monitoring, and again, we just weren't really ready to use it. But when we were shopping around for someone, because we use industrial and commercial, we liked Energent for that reason, and so we ended up using Energent for our snowmaking program and then expanding it to everything else. So again, we took it and we put it to what we called the Big Six. Those are our 6 biggest restaurants and bars. So basically, we built these models for all of our restaurants, and these are the models that what we did is we bring in weather, so temperature, precipitation, and wind. We bring in our guest visits, and then we bring in a number of transactions. So because we don't always know if people are going to be going in those restaurants if they're on Hill. We could have 12,000 people on Hill, but only so many go to the restaurants. And we didn't want to do it by dollar figure because we raise the prices and that artificially changes things for us. So we are a number of transactions. One of the things to note is that this is wind. So when we were working with Lou, who's from Energent, she built a model and said, I've never seen anything, I've never seen the wind impact energy consumption in any of our models before. Because she's in Ontario, and I'm like, okay, it's at the top of the mountain. So what we're doing now is we're using these models to design our new restaurant. So we're looking at a new restaurant in the Alpine. We're providing this model to the architects, so they'll invest in the envelope. More money in the envelope, less energy consumption, but we have a model to show it. So we're using these models with the architects for renovations, upgrades, and then of course to justify the business case for things like new windows and changing doors and that kind of thing. So the models are very helpful to us that way. So based on these models, what we have at Worcester Blackcomb is you have a 5% energy reduction target tied to your personal bonus. If anyone can do that in your organization, I would highly recommend it, because once you put a target on something to someone's personal money that they get at the end of the year, everyone comes out of the woodwork, and then suddenly they put pressure on their managers and the supervisors, and on it goes. But you have to be able to measure that in order to put that in place. And you have to be able to measure it fairly, so that's why we can bring in the weather, temperature, and so if it's a cold year, you don't lose your bonus because it was a cold year. This is normalized for, again, weather and day of the week. You know, we're not comparing a Sunday to a Monday, which to us is a really big deal. A Sunday and Monday are completely different. So this is a compare chart for our main restaurants. And again, I had to block out the financials, but you sort of see percentage-wise. So the Roundhouse, in the year that we optimized it came down about 16%, but we do fiscal year to fiscal year. This is the next fiscal year to the one before, so it went down another 15%. The Glacier Creek, that's a bit overestimated because we had a problem with the meter, the way we installed it. But the Rendezvous, there's a great example. Rendezvous, we haven't optimized them yet. The manager is crazy about power management, but part of the reason why she is, so she dropped her energy consumption by 16% last year with 0 capital changes, completely behavioral. She's a bit, like I said, she's a bit of an energy ninja in a very nice way. She's great, but the fact that she was getting her reporting every week and getting her percentages, and also they're a very competitive group. So you bring it up and say, so if that person's over, you know, we phone them and say, did you see your performance this week or whatever? But it's just like we had this at the end of the year, and they were making jokes about we're having a big party and we're not inviting that guy. So it's a joke, but that's where we go first. So now we know that these guys are all doing well. Dusty's is an area where we need to do work, so that's where we're all going to focus. Our mechanical people, behavioral people, that's where we're focusing our attention right now. And the interesting thing is, their big 6 or their big 3 are not my big 3. So Glacier Creek uses less than Dusty's because it's bigger, but it's only open for 6 months out of the year, and it's a bar. Bars are open nonstop. So again, where you're focusing may not be, for me, is different than it would be for them. So they get this compare chart, and it is based from the start of the fiscal, so they know exactly where their percentages are during the year, all the time, toward their goal of 5% at the end of the fiscal year. Okay. So again, the question is always, are we comparing last year to this year? And again, it's based on the model, so everyone understands that we're comparing to a model of how that building should run on that day, given these circumstances. And again, we feel like it's a much more fair comparison. So this is what a report looks like the restaurant managers get. And it's not just managers, supervisors, lead hands, anyone gets these reports. It just tells you day to day how you're doing compared to your target and your actual and kind of what it was predicted. And so we just make it really simple. You open up, go, I had a great week. I'm just going to move on to go to the next one. So this is a week where things didn't go as well. Now, if, sometimes it's a one-time thing. We try to program in all of our events beforehand, but sometimes there's an event that we didn't know about. You get an alert. You can kind of look at it and say, okay, I know this. But when you're getting them over and over again, then that's when we start to go in and focus. And so you'll get this sort of report, and if you go to the next slide, you can go in each day and look at what the trends are. So all you do is open up your calendar, click on that day, and then you can bring up the next day that has the alert and compare what's going on during that time. So that's when we identify things like, at the Roundhouse we have an occupancy sensor that if someone goes in, it triggers on the heat for, well, the cleaners were coming in just after that starts. So then they were triggering on the heat for 2 hours. We got the cleaners to come in a half an hour earlier or an hour earlier, and we didn't have that problem. So this is where we find those kinds of trends, and then of course that's how we look at our mechanical system and pair it with our DVC. So a very easy tool for most people to use. This is an example of different days and what we would sort of go through, looking at the trends and sort of what's happening. But you can have a good day with a spike because, again, we try to program in our food and beverage events beforehand. And we give that list to the developers at Internet, and they sort of put that in so that we can account for that ahead of time. So again, if there's a problem, we have our DVC systems. We work with our planners. Another point I think to make is, who's going to be looking at this stuff? You have to, as you go through this and as you're implementing, you have to figure out who's going to be looking at it and what they're going to be doing, and you're sort of establishing that as you go along. For us, the tool is used really well because everyone is totally on it. Their bonuses are tied. They're competing with each other, that kind of thing. So our planning people, basically we had to, at the front, say, okay, we're going to implement this system. We need the planners to spend time working with us. We need mechanical people to spend time. And we were sort of given approval to do that. And then we sort of structured. So we attend the food and beverage meetings with all the managers every month. And then we come in and we make sure we're following up on all the issues. So they feel supported. They're not just getting a report and then we're not doing anything about it. Okay. So this is our overall food and beverage top 6. They reduce their energy consumption by 10%. So this is our gas and electrical data together. When we put it together, so 10% for food and beverage. Food and beverage is 30% of our on-mountain consumption. And they reduce by 10%. That's pretty huge. This is what my stuff looks like, and you saw what the Energen stuff looks like. It looks much better when they generate the, but we don't have gas reporting at all of our, we can't tie into all of the meters in Whistler yet, because the type of meter that we have, the only gas reporting we have is at the Roundhouse. So 10% reduction, and again, very few capital changes for that 10% reduction. Okay, so once we were, again, doing CEOP and looking at our restaurants, and again, we're doing a lot of locations that we don't have CEOP in. The next thing is our snowmaking system. So snowmaking uses 30% of our energy for the entire year in 4 months. So we only have 2 counts, Whistler and Blackcomb on hill, so we have 26 meters. So the reason why we brought Energen is we wanted to start looking at MTNR for snowmaking. The reason why we were able to kind of sell this is because the whole concept of MTNR and the success of it was started by CEOP. So we finally had that example of if you buy the meter and you invest in the software, this is what you get without capital. It's just getting, you need one success story for someone to understand kind of why you're making this investment instead of just going out and buying light bulbs, which we are doing all that as well. So this is our crazy snowmaking. This is only one mountain. You go to the next. Okay, this is what our snowmaking system looks like. So what we're doing is we're pairing flow meters and electrical meters and taking the temperature. We're trying to figure out how much it costs, how much water and energy it takes to make snow in certain areas. Because right now what happens, everyone goes out and says, just make snow over there, and we have no idea how much it's costing and in terms of, and also how much energy and water it's taking to do that. It's a very complicated system. So my point about this is if Energen can help us with this, most applications they'll be able to figure out. We're quite high maintenance, and we're a little bit strange, and so we're, this is a very complex system, and they've been able to work with us to kind of make that happen. Chris, if you go to the next. So again, we figured out, and until we metered it and measured it, we had no idea that snowmaking was consuming 30%. The assumption was always that lift did half, and everything else was the other half. And so even the snowmakers, because we did a workshop with the snowmakers, and we stacked everything and put our compressors and blah, 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 even the snowmakers and the engineers we were so shocked that it was 30%. But again, now we know where to focus our energy, and you can do things with snowmaking. You can run the pumps at night. You can change. We found that if we were turning compressors on because it was cold and we were going to make snow, it's eating 80% of the energy when it's idling, when it's modulating. And so that's not even making snow. And sometimes they turn them on and it would sit like that for a week because we wouldn't get the temperatures and nobody would go and turn it off. So again, measurement system often reveals that there's more to it than what you think. So it looks a bit complicated, but like as you can see, we have all of these different locations, and then we have we can go to the profile for anyone. So if we're having issues as well, like right now, we're making a ton of snow and we're having issues with one of our compressors. We can actually go into the trend to see what's going on there. We can see how we're running different things. We can see how they're working together. We're working on sort of stacking the demand. So when we have a big issue with demand, we get ratchet charges because we have a small operation in the summer compared to the winter. So not only jacking up demand costs us now, it'll cost us for the next 11 months possibly. So we manage all of that. But again, you know, the snowmakers, and we can sort of see what's happening. And often we just get a call that says, how many days do we make snow? How many hours do you have on this compressor? What's happening? So we use this tool for a lot of different applications. So last year we brought our snowmaking consumption down by 12%, and we actually made more snow than the year before. So we're trying to get that efficiency metric of how many right now, because again, it's pretty complicated, but overall we're getting less kilowatt hours per gallon, which is per acre foot that we're creating, and that's kind of what we're going for. Okay. So the other thing that we do is it takes less energy to make snow at colder temperatures. We just need less air. So on our compressor side, so what we do is we plan. So you can see this was a forecast from last week. We didn't get quite the cold snap that we thought we were going to. But on the Whistler side, we rolled over into a new demand period on the day that it was supposed to go into the cold snap. So I did a calculation for the senior leadership team to say it would cost us about $20,000 more to have the demand at a certain level at 11:45 the night before than it would to have it at 12:15 the next day. So we use these models, the EMIS, to plan what we're doing and then kind of monitor how it is. And again, we want to attach a metric to the fact that intuitively we know it takes less energy to make snow at colder temperatures, but we want to be able to quantify that so it helps us with our overall plan. So we establish our targets. Again, the measurement systems help us decide where we need to put our energy. And then we set out our targets. This year we were we actually saved about a gig more than we had set out to. So again, these help us measure, you know, where our savings are, and we report all this stuff to BC Hydro. We have to report to the senior leadership team, and we're able to do that quarterly. Another funny thing is that we're now using the Energen system with finance. So the finance people need to, sometimes our bills in the winter are hundreds of thousands of dollars per month per account. They need to figure out kind of where we're at. So we're billed, we have mid-month to mid-month on some of our big accounts. They need to figure out whether we're on target or not for that month. So what they do is they use our Energen information to see if we're tracking where we were tracking last year, to see if our numbers are realistic to put into. So we're actually training our finance people on our Energen system, which is something I would never have thought we would use it. We track some of our behavioral stuff. This is Ugly Sweater Day. That guy was in guest relations all day wearing that, if you can imagine. So we're part of the Workforce Conservation Awareness Program. So we have a lot of behavioral stuff. And so when we run our contests, we can now see how impactful they are in different areas. So on Ugly Sweater Day, we turn down the thermostat by a few degrees. We can see if that actually makes, how much of a difference that makes. Go to the next one. And this is a food and beverage competition that we want to run. Again, it's behavioral. We're targeting a certain number of behaviors, getting all the restaurants to do it. We will know who wins and who has the most impact by pulling up that compare chart. Super simple. You know, everybody will know where they're at. And we weren't able to run these kinds of contests before that because how would we know how well everyone was doing? So for us, values, EMIS. So again, tracking our optimization programs, so you have to do it. MT&R, assessing our bonus incentives and reduction targets. So, you know, at the end of the year, interestingly, you know, you have our CEO phones and says, does the senior vice president get his full bonus for his energy performance? Which I love having some sort of control over that. And I just send the information and say yes or no. We have to use it for baselines for all of our incentive programs. You have to have your baseline. So again, we've had those in place because we've had the EMIS in place for a while in our meters. we're able to have those baselines and get into a lot of programs right away, not have to wait to accumulate that baseline for a year. We use it a lot for capital planning in building the business case. So again, we strategically decide where to go. We have a 5-year capital plan. An example is the day lodge. So we have a base area lodge, and the system is very inefficient. And the mechanical people have been wanting to upgrade that system for quite a long time. And intuitively, we know the boilers are 50% efficient. We know that it's a problem. But every year, it somehow gets pushed off the capital table. So Lou, who works for Energen, she was looking at the model, and she said, why is it that at the day lodge, you're using this much energy in the spring? You're not really open during that time. And the answer is, which the mechanical people know, is that the domestic hot water system is tied into the heating loop. The heating loop runs all the time to accommodate the domestic hot water system, which is hugely oversized for that building. So again, we take that information, we quantify it, we back up the mechanical people, and we get those capital projects through to make those changes that have been pushed off the table for years. We're able to do it. We show the model, we show the information, and we build it in the business case, and are we able to quantify that? And then, of course, we bring in the incentives, so that makes it even better. And again, just tracking our programs. So why do we use Energen? Again, great for industrial and commercial applications. We have someone who's designated to oversee our program, which we really liked. In the past, we had a lot of changeover all the time. We can imagine with our operations being what they are, that's difficult for us, because then we have to start all over again with even just explaining what the snowmaking system is like, even explaining what our buildings are like. It's difficult, so we like the consistency. They've definitely catered things to meet our needs on the snowmaking side. And, we have crazy times where we're busy and we can't get to this and that. And they're just very patient and great ideas with how to make things work. And then they're also pairing. We have some PLC systems that monitor our lift speeds and that kind of thing. All this stuff is coming together. So our electrical people and all the systems they're building and our IT people, we're finding a lot of commonalities, and we're kind of bringing those systems together. Really good people at Energen. They are responsive and timely. We find a lot of value in it, so what we pay for the system compared to what we're seeing in savings is definitely more than justified. And yeah, we just like working with them. They're bright and we get along with our people. Most of them are skiers, which is, it helps. Yeah, that's pretty much our story.